Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Astatara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charnavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityalita Pavishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Astatara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Govinda Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Brajabhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Maya Pranavadip Dham Ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Jamuna Maya Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Srimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi. All glory to the Sum of devotees. All glory to the Sum of devotees. All glory to the Sum of devotees. All glory to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. Additional pastimes, chapter titled Opening a Temple in Los Angeles. March 8th, 1968. Srila Prabhupada flew from Los Angeles to San Francisco. After the slower pace of the Los Angeles Center, the activities in San Francisco encouraged Prabhupada. This volume is too high. I think San Francisco Center has been very much sanctified by unalloyed devotional service of the members here. As soon as there are sincere devotees, immediately the situation changes favorably. This is Prabhupada's pronounced statement, very important to appreciate. As soon as there are sincere devotees, immediately the situation changes favorably. The morning and evening meetings drew crowds of interested young people, and Srila Prabhupada observed, dancing in ecstasy is often exhibited to the transcendental pleasure of everyone present. Prabhupada was witnessing the success of the Sankirtan movement. He had planted the seed, and now the plant of Krishna Bhakti was flowering. To revisit his center and see that his disciples, by sincerely following his orders, were advancing in Krishna consciousness, increased Prabhupada's bliss and satisfaction. He was witnessing the power of kirtan to transform the fallen souls, and to see his smile of approval increased the ecstasy of the devotees. Guru Das showed Prabhupada slides of the Krishna deity Prabhupada had named Kartamish. One picture showed Kartamish shortly after the devotees had obtained him from an import store and placed him in the temple. Does everyone know what Kartamish means? Common Hindi word, Kartamish. Sometimes Kartam Shahi or Kartam Shan. It means the boss. Krishna is the boss. Other slides showed Kartamish after the devotees had been regularly worshiping him and offering him food. As Prabhupada viewed the slides, he began to chuckle. I think the deity has changed. Guru Das reviewed the slides. Sure enough, Kartamish had become bluer and plumper. Has he been painted or anything? Umapati asked. Guru Das said they hadn't done anything to him. You have been taking care of him, Prabhupada affirmed. Bhakti Yoga was a scientific law. As one approached Krishna, he reciprocated. Anyone who has been here for the last 7 years has noticed similar changes in our beloved Sri Sri Radha Govinda. He reciprocated. Wherever Srila Prabhupada's disciples were following the process carefully, he saw the improvement. Krishna consciousness, he said, was a treatment of the diseased soul by medicine and diet. The medicine was chanting Hare Krishna, and the diet was prasadam. If one followed this program, he would be rejuvenated. If one neglected it, he would relapse. Srila Prabhupada found both health and illness. Upendra, Prabhupada's personal servant in San Francisco, came before Prabhupada crying. He said he couldn't overcome his sex urge. He had engaged in illicit sex. When he asked if Krishna forgives offenses, Prabhupada consoled him. Yes, Krishna forgives. Upendra asked if he could overcome his lust by getting married. No, you are too young, Prabhupada said. You should stay away from rich food. Eat starvishly. He told Upendra to take unspiced dal and chapatis without butter. After a few weeks in San Francisco, Srila Prabhupada flew to New York, where the devotees greeted him with a grand airport reception. A city newspaper ran an article, Guru Returns. The New York Center at 26 Second Avenue had improved, and there were new faces and enthusiastic kirtans. Here are many new flower-like young boys and girls, and they are all so much interested in Krishna consciousness very seriously. I am surprised at their great enthusiasm, and I am very happy amongst them. Prabhupada stayed in his old rooms at 26 Second Avenue, although there had been talk of getting him another residence. Everything had been too expensive. Prabhupada had assured Brahmananda, I would like to stay in my apartment. If it is silent and solitary, I feel pleasure to live there, better than elsewhere. Although Srila Prabhupada's plans were to stay in New York less than 2 weeks, he talked of staying longer if his disciples could arrange for him to work steadily at his translating and would help him publish his books one after another. Prabhupada had written Brahmananda, I want to sit down tightly with some assistants and spend the rest of my time translating Srimad Bhāgavatam and other books, and train students to do the preaching on the outside. So from now on, I would like to speak only at very important engagements, and for most engagements, have my students preach. All of you must learn to preach, and for me, my most important preaching work is to finish up the Srimad Bhāgavatam. So please try to make arrangement like this, as it is very important that my books be finished as soon as possible. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhāgavatam, 4th Canto, 1st chapter, text number 2, chapter titled Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu. That's what they're telling me, 412. Is that correct, or did somebody change it? Thank you for checking. We don't want to be repetitive or negligent. And what's going on with this guy? It's okay? We're going to wait. I can chat. Akuteng ruchaye pradad. Akuteng ruchaye pradad. Apibratri mating nripaha. Apibratri mating nripaha. Putrika dhammamasritya. Putrika dhammamasritya. Shatarupa namoditaha. Shatarupa manoditaha. What is the difficulty for this?
It's not paying. It's showing connected from my phone, but it is not displaying.
Oh, If it's not working, shut it down.
It was going to be two, I guess, and then he spoke
Yeah.
to Chaitanya Chakravarti.
Whoever has can chant. You can pass around the phone. Akuteng ruchiye pradat api bratrim mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha akutim ruchiye pradat api bratrim mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha Akuteng ruchiye pradat api bratra mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha. Shri Shivara Govinda Dev ki jai. Keep chanting. Have to do it 10 times minimum. Prabhupada said 10 times. Akutim ruchiye pradat api bratrim mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha. Akuting ruchiye pradat api bratri mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha. Akutim ruchiye pradat api bratri mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha. Ladies. Akutim bratre rata trimatim nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha. Akuting ruchiye pradat api bratri mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha. Anyone else? Akutim ruchiye pradat api bratra mating nirpaha putrika dhammasritya satarupānumoditaha. Akutim akuti ruchiye unto the great sage Ruchi pradat handed over api although pratrimatim daughter having a brother nripa the king putrika get the resultant son dharmam religious rights ashritya taking shelter Shatarupa by the wife of Swayambhuva Manu Anumoditaha being sanctioned. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Akuti had 2 brothers, but in spite of her brothers, King Swayambhuva Manu handed her over to Prajapati Ruchi on the condition that the son born of her be returned to Manu as his son. This he did in consultation with his wife Hamsarūpa. Purport. Sometimes a sonless person offers his daughter to a husband on the condition that his grandson be returned to him to be adopted as his son and inherit his property. This is called Putrika Dharma, which means that by execution of religious rituals, one gets a son, although one is sonless by one's own wife. But here we see extraordinary behavior in Manu, for in spite of his having two sons, he handed over his first daughter to Prajapati Ruchi on the condition that the son born of his daughter be returned to him as his son. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments in this connection that King Manu knew that the Supreme Personality of Godhead would take birth in the womb of Akuti. Therefore, in spite of having two sons, he wanted the particular son born of Akuti because he was ambitious to have the Supreme Personality of Godhead appear as his son and grandson. Manu is the lawgiver of mankind, and since he personally executed the Putrika Dharma, we may accept that such a system may be adopted by mankind also. Thus, even though one has a son, and one wants to have a particular son from one's daughter, one may give one's daughter in charity on that condition. That is the opinion of Srila Jiva Goswami. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chaksuam Tamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangu Mankaite Gurum Yakripatam Baham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatarnam. So these chapters, Prabhupada relates in the purport to text 1. Obviously, we see how everything was laid out. He completely goes through all of the chapters because they're already complete. This is his life's work. This is not something that he spontaneously took up for whatever reason. Sometimes we see that people will write something thinking that my words deserve to be heard, as if I'm some special person. But Prabhupada had everything completely outlined. Not just this 4th canto, but all the cantos. For whatever reason, after the 10th canto, Srila Prabhupada entered into his rightful reward, returning back home to be with his beloved lords in Vrindavan. And so we have something to meditate upon. And in his foresight, he gave us Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summary study. So everything is actually complete. Although someone may say, oh, Prabhupada didn't complete his magnum opus, the Srimad Bhāgavatam. Actually, he completed it. He completed it before he even began the 2nd canto, technically. So this is Prabhupada's Trikalagya. He saw everything, just like Swayambhuva Manu also had this ability to see in the future. He knew that his daughter would give birth to an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he made some arrangement which was seemingly not to be done. He already had 2 sons. So there was no need for him to execute this particular ritual in order to get us another son. But these things are all done for a particular purpose, which will be revealed later on. And if we hadn't had the opportunity to receive Srimad Bhāgavatam from the pure devotee, then we would be bereft of this knowledge, which sometimes may seemingly appear to be historical. Who needs to know the genealogical table of the daughters of Manu? Or for that matter, the genealogical tables of any of these various personalities in the Srimad Bhāgavatam. What will that do for us with regards to preaching? One thing it does for those who are skeptical is that it lays out a historical demography where one can see that this is not just some random literature, but that it is actually the historical record that accompanies the creation of the material world. It is not just, Prabhupada gives some hint in this regard that we see the Vedas are basically the handbook. Just like when one purchases anything, he gets inside some instruction manual. And this instruction manual gives him a complete understanding of how this machine works, whatever it is, whether it's a car or your phone, anything, even simple machinery has some instructions. So what to speak of the most complex material cosmic manifestation? This is also, just like yantra rudhani maya, just like this material body as a machine. So what is the manual for this machine? It is the same manual, because we are all part and parcel of this creation. So the Vedas are specifically meant to guide mankind. And the Manu Samhita is even a more detailed, how can you say, compilation. Has anyone here attempted to read Manu Samhita besides Amoga? Here's His Grace, who needs to know, the temple commander. Why does he need to know? So that he can give proper instructions. The Manu Samhita is so detailed. It gives no, if you read this, if you start to read, you'll be bewildered by how many instructions are there. What should be done, what should not be done, under what circumstances. And many of the literature, like the various Puranas, are filled with such instructions which seemingly have no connection with our so-called reality. I remember when we first went to India as young devotees, and we would be with some experienced devotees who had lived in India for some time, like Gaur Govinda Maharaj, of course, who was native there, or Bhagavat Prabhu, who lived there with Gaur Govinda Maharaj for some time. And we would set out driving, and all of a sudden he'd see something, and he'd say, "Oh, we have to stop. There's a bad omen. This black cat crosses from the left to the right." I'm like, "Oh, what is this?" We don't stop for these things in America. We continue our preaching. But they become so much, acculturated that it's difficult for them to avoid following such things, because then maybe there'll be if something does happen, then they'll say, "Oh, because you," or if you see a man carrying buckets of water, full or empty, across your path, they say, "Oh, what is this?" So many different things. Practically, you can't move if these things happen. So, for preaching, we don't take these things into such consideration. Only under very rare circumstances. And Prabhupada gave some credence to certain things, like traveling on certain times or days. But he always showed us a way around it. Like if you don't want to travel on a Thursday, what do? He would put his luggage out the night before. See, so basically that was technically starting the journey. See, instead of Thursday morning, he's starting on Wednesday night. So you have to make some adjustment, just for whatever. So Prabhupada gave us all these different formula, how to. So now, these things are nonetheless, and so it may seem a genealogical table. What does it mean for us? It just establishes the reality that the Bhāgavatam is not just some fictional work created, that these great sages, they had nothing better to do than to sit and recount whose was whose son, whose daughter, who's this, who's that. No. Because they wanted to record this for posterity. At that time, This at the beginning of Kali Yuga, because why? In the absence of Lord Krishna, who had returned to his own abode, and the advent of Kali, everyone knew that there would be no record of this unless it was now written down. Previously, it was all transmitted orally. Who can imagine? Can you imagine transmitting this orally? Shruti Dar, and someone sits and listens and doesn't forget one single word? So they had to write everything down, so therefore it's being recorded now for posterity. So there are reasons for everything. And so we're reading this because the spiritual master has taken the time to again, what is that? Rajarsi Viduhu. Because this is the way the great Rajarsis also understood it. And who are we in comparison to them? That we can't spare some time out of our lives to submissively hear, even if we think, how am I going to benefit from this? Because this knowledge in itself is separate from the act of your capacity to understand it. It is pure, Shrinvata Swakata Ruchi. It is purifying. Just by hearing it, whether you understand it, whether you appreciate it, whether you want to hear it, whether you don't want to hear it, whether you're sleepy, tired, bored. Shrinvatam Swakata. Shrinvatam. Purifying. So it's out of necessity, not just some fashion that we gather here in the morning and sit in assembly just to, because it is some routine that we must do this. Yes, we must do it. But we must do it. We must understand the reason that we are doing it. I'm not, someone may say, I'm not interested in it. Let me go to 10th canto. I'm not interested in this. I'll skip ahead. This is all boring. You know. So this burden to follow the instructions of the spiritual master transcends my ability to initially appreciate them. That appreciation will come further when that front door is open over there. That's still blinking. So in case there's somebody already outside. So it transcends my limited capacity. And so I'm giving submissive oral reception until such time as I have the appreciation that every single word of the Bhāgavatam has the same potency as the 10th canto. And Prabhupada used to criticize that those who don't want to hear the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, this is Vasudeva Krishna. I don't want to hear Vasudeva Krishna pastimes. I want to hear Swayambhava. I want to hear Krishna in his Vrindavan Leela only. So this Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur spent a significant amount of time defeating this Sahaja philosophy. Because he knew it would be the ruination. There is no profit. How does it benefit the world? Who can appreciate those things on this condition level? Who amongst? You see so many people, Manushanam Sahasreshu. Who can appreciate this highest aspect without some misunderstanding due to our conditioned consciousness? It is not possible. And those who think it is possible, they're also Harava Bhaktasya Gautam Mahagan. Manoraten Asati Daivatobihi. They only think as hovering on the mental platform. They have no real capacity. If they're honest, they'll admit this. And they'll go about the routine work of serving the spiritual master patiently. Tate nukampam susamiksamano. Like the son who doesn't hanker for the wealth of the father, but he understands that at a certain point, I will inherit this. It is my birthright. I'm not praying for the demise of my father. But I understand that my Father is the richest in every respect. And if I can serve my Father to His satisfaction, then why wouldn't He appoint whatever He has and give to Him freely? And we've seen this. Prabhupada was so generous. You see how he treated Upendra. Upendra was a nice devotee, but he was so fallen. And so many times Prabhupada lifted him up, and again he fell down. And again and again. Prabhupada blessed. The heaviest letter I've ever read to any disciple was a letter written to Upendra by Srila Prabhupada. Absolutely the heaviest letter. Amazing. In his condemnation of his things. But the fact that he took the time to write it, to try to correct his disciple, the mercy of the spiritual master is amazing. And why? Because Prabhupada said that he could recognize that Upendra's weakness of heart was the cause, that he wasn't trying to be offensive, but that he was weak. And his attachment to Prabhupada kept him coming back, but he could not. What prevents us from this fall down is a sincere chanting of the Maha Mantra. So this is our only saving grace. There is nothing else. All of us are weak. When we're reading these letters of Srila Prabhupada, we see many times, why are we reading them? Why is this the central aspect of the training for future GBCs? To understand how Prabhupada handled every situation. Because he is our primary example. He is the Acharya who teaches by example. So we have no other reference in this regard. It is not that I can apply my limited experience in trying to adjust to some situation. I must refer to Prabhupada's specific handling of a situation. Nothing new should be done. Not that I am so great that I can forgive. Who am I to forgive anything? What capacity do I have to ignore a situation that demands attention in a certain way? No, it's not. We just simply have to follow in the footsteps. This Mahajana Yenukata Sapanta, this is not, we refer to those 12 Mahajans, but we understand that this means every pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. And so we're very fortunate that in our lifetime, Prabhupada has given us a wealth of information. No one has given such, any acharyas before that have given so much, but in Kali Yuga, no one has given to this extent how Prabhupada has detailed how this Krishna conscious movement can be carried on for the next 10,000 years. Which is why it is happening. And it's not happening for any other reason. It's only happening because of the advent of Srila Prabhupada. So this is some specific, this will be recorded in that respect by future recipients of this information. They will wonder how Srila Prabhupada single-handedly could do this. Inaugurate this Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtan. How he was the messenger. How he brought this personally. And how he distributed it. And how he empowered others. This is not an ordinary thing. And so we sit and read the genealogical table of the daughters of Manu in deference and out of respect to Srila Prabhupada's massive sacrifice to produce this work. And so it is not my choosing to skip ahead, to jump ahead. In New York in 1976, Prabhupada had come for Rath Yatra. It was a very seminal moment. This is the peak of Krishna consciousness. This is 10 years after the inauguration, the literal birth of ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which was celebrated in Washington, D.C., just prior to Prabhupada's coming to New York. The actual date, the 11th, Prabhupada was in New York for Rath Yatra at that point. But the Tithi was, I believe, the 9th or the 7th. But anyway, in any case, he celebrated in Washington, D.C. And so here we see how in that short time, miraculously, this movement had been fully, how can you say, manifest by the potency of the empowered, pure devotee. And so Srila Prabhupada was there, and he was giving this lecture, and it might have been on the appearance of Rupa Goswami, appearance or disappearance. And at that time also there was always something topical that Prabhupada would speak upon that maybe had been discussed in the morning walk, maybe he had discussed it with the GBCs. But he described how one cannot jump over the head of the spiritual master. You cannot think, and this is alluding to so many different aspects if one examines carefully, contemporaneously. And as many people have decided that, yes, I can just approach Prabhupada now. I don't have to go through anyone else. But he was saying, no, you cannot jump over the head. You know, someone can say, well, now I can take initiation from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or maybe even Rupa Goswami. Why stop it? Why just Srila Prabhupada? So this whole fallacy was being presented, hadn't even manifest fully yet. It was just now that Prabhupada had given some hint. You know, but he was, for our benefit, he was allowing us to hear it so that in the future we would remember these words spoken at that time, at the high point of expansion of this movement across the globe, 1976.
When the New York court decision came.
New York Rath Yatra, where it began and where it had its most successful moment, at least in Prabhupada's eyes. He told Harisari personally that I consider this to be the culmination of my teaching work.
In the New York court,
at that time, yes, in 1976.
Krishna consciousness is not a cult, it's a bona fide religion.
Established ISKCON as a bona fide religion, as the Krishna conscious movement. Of course, Prabhupada, this was just some further affirmation. Prabhupada didn't care whether it was accepted legally or not. But it was an affirmation. And as a matter of fact, the court case that we entered into here 7 years ago, we presented again to the judge all of Prabhupada's massive literature, along with his last will and testament. And after due deliberation and reviewing everything, they said, yes, based on this, we can understand that this is a hierarchical movement, that the founder had specific instructions, and that this last will and testament embodies these instructions, that the GBC is the ultimate authority and the ultimate managing authority, both legal and management. Some people are saying there's a difference, but at least in the courts here, they've established that one and the same. And therefore the case was won on that basis. So these things are significant. Even after so many years, Prabhupada, in his foresight, in his books, in his last will and testament, in his instructions, has preserved and protected, just like it says in Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Ye Jana Paripati. Right? Krishna is preserving and protecting also. And we see that through the parampara, the same protection and preservation is there by those sincere, bona fide followers. And so this is also impetus for us to not neglect that what is the strength of the movement? Purity is the force. Not to be adulterated, not to make up anything, not to speculate, not to try to change. Prabhupada said that this is our disease, this changing, trying to change. Everything is there. To that extent, Yashi Devi Parabhaktir Yata Deve Tataguru. How can we say that? That if one has implicit faith in the spiritual master and Krishna, everything will be revealed. So what does this mean, implicit faith? Every single word of the spiritual master, not my choice. They have a joke, that you, like a menu, something from column A, something from column B. This is not a multiple choice philosophy. You have to accept the whole philosophy. You cannot accept just part of it. What I like. Well, I like this. That is, because of that, therefore you have these offshoots. You have these various bogus gurus. And we can call them bogus gurus. You have Bhakti Marg, you have this Marg, that Marg. It's all bogus. Because they're simply picking those points which they feel will be profitable for them. I will get more followers with this philosophy. Prabhupada could have done that. He said no. He wanted to give the pure philosophy, and Krishna reciprocated. If you want a diamond, you have to pay the price. You have to be willing to pay the price. And if you're willing to pay the price, then you will get the full value. You will get the real object. That's why, in the beginning we saw not so many followers, but some very sincere. And he alluded to this. Immediately everything changes when there are some sincere followers. So therefore he said, sincerity is the prerequisite for advancement in spiritual life. Sincerity. That lecture in Mayapur in 1976, in the 7th canto. So all the big personalities that we all know, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, all the demigods, Lakshmi Devi, everyone is there, present, after the death of Hiranyakashipu. It's not that they were there in the initial, no, they were all in there watching above. They have ringside seats in their airplanes. Right? What do they call like box seats? And they're looking down and they're watching everything. So when Hiranyakashipu was killed, then they all came down. And then Lord Brahma, of course, he's the first created person. And so he has the garland, this is just like you giving the Bhāgavatam class. You have to, now everything is done, and the Supreme Lord must be honored. There must be some arti. But everyone's afraid. No one had ever seen this incarnation. No one could even believe that it was possible. So unique. Hiranyakashipu, of course, this is the pastime of Jai and Vijay. But his boon was so detailed. Not in the air, not on the land, not in the water, not in the daytime, not in the nighttime, not by man, not by beast, not by any weapon. So specific. So the Lord, of course, is so perfect that he appeared in such a way that he fulfilled the boon of Lord Brahma, who was being foolish. And still, Paritranaya Sadhanam Vinasha, he came specifically like this, fulfilled his devotees' desire. But Lord Brahma couldn't do it. He was too, well, you could say he was afraid. First of all, he knew he made a big mistake. Created so many problems. But then he wanted to hand the garland to who? Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva didn't want anything to do with this. None of the other demigods wanted anything to do with this. Then they asked Lakshmi Devi. What was Lakshmi Devi's response? Anyone know? Anyone remember from that lecture? She said, I don't know if this is my husband, and as a chaste wife, I can't approach. I've never seen this form before. So even the goddess of fortune didn't know if this was actually her husband. So the only person who understood was Prahlad. And so they gave to Prahlad. So therefore the painting has Prahlad. He could give to the Lord. And Prabhupada said, like pushing a child into the cage of a lion. They thought, let him do it. After all, the Lord appeared for his sake. And Lord Brahma said that. The Lord has appeared on your behalf, so therefore you do it. They were all afraid. And so this, and the Prabhupada commented, so therefore it is not by seniority. Because Prahlad Maharaj is 5 years old, and all these demigods are timeless in their age. And what to speak of their positions. He says, not by seniority, it is by sincerity. This was a great lesson. Not by seniority. So sometimes we're thinking, oh, I've been in this movement for 5 years, I'm senior. Walk around like this, head held up high. Now I am this, I am that. You know, but we understand that this unfortunate mentality will be an impediment going forward. One has to always be Trinadapi Sinichena. He has to feel himself lower than the straw in the street. He cannot associate some position with himself. Because if you lose that position, then what happens? Then the false ego also crashes. Even the materialists know this. Don't identify with your position. Because if the position is lost, then what happens to you? Yeah. So this is a very instructive thing for us. That we have to be patient. That the Tiksha, what is that? Utsaha nishtaya dharya tat tat karma pravartana. That enthusiasm must be there, but what is it followed by? Patience and firm conviction. Patience and firm conviction. So if someone is saying, oh, I'm getting old, I need to rush, I need to quickly jump and become a Rasika Bhakta. I have to skim these books. They approach it academically. They want to get the Cliff's Notes for Srimad Bhāgavatam. Everyone knows what Cliff's Notes are when you were in college? Cliff Notes, before they had, digital thing, you used to get these little books. You were assigned some book to read, and they had Cliff's Notes on, the specific book. So you didn't have to read the whole book. You only had to go to the library and get the Cliff's Notes, the abbreviation, and you would read that. So everybody wants to jump to the Cliff's Notes of the Srimad Bhāgavatam and read the 10th canto only. And this way they think, no, I'll become perfect. No. Prabhupada said, first 9 cantos, then one is self-realized. If you're not self-realized, how can you appreciate? And if someone is thinking, no, I can appreciate now. I've been here for 5 years. I've been doing everything. I can understand that. No. He will simply be bewildered. He will simply be bewildered. What will happen? He will become an academic. He will go teach in a university. He will go live in Vrindavan and study 8 hours a day in the Vrindavan Research Institute. But he won't serve the order of the spiritual master. So this selfishness is very unfortunate. One wants to satisfy his own intellectual proclivity. To the exclusion of the spiritual master's instructions. This is one cannot be identified as a disciple. We are no longer this, how can you say, free to do like the dog running on the street. The street dog, he has no collar. But the dog who has his master, he's identified by his kuntimala. This is our collar. Whether it's visible or invisible, one has to remember that this is, I am the servant of the spiritual master, first and foremost. And that his order is my life and soul. And if he's thinking anything else, then he'll have a short life in Krishna consciousness. He will just end up being any. Thousands of people have come. Manushanam sahasreshu kaschid yatiti siddhaye. And Prabhupada repeated it. Why? Why even make such a mention that don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays? Because he could see that this is not something that was going to be a long-term commitment for many. Just like in the material world, marriage is not a long-term commitment anymore. People take this vow very shallow. You know, the definition of vow is lifelong, full commitment. It's not just like a simple thing. You know, one takes a vow, it cannot be broken. Right? When Arjuna took a vow that he would give up his life if he couldn't save the sons of the Brahmana. Everybody knows that story. The Brahmana came to the gates of Dwarka. Are there no Kshatriyas? Says, why my sons are being taken? You know, in an untimely way. One after another, before they even so-called hit the ground. As soon as the wife gave birth, immediately they were taken away. And he complained, not once, but 6 times. Finally, Arjuna, it came to his attention. He said, oh, yes, I vow that I will give up my life if I cannot prevent this. And of course, he couldn't prevent it because this was the trick of Mahavishnu, to get darshan of Arjuna and Krishna. So, but he was ready to fulfill that vow, was to commit suicide. It was a Kshatriya vow. And even the Kshatriyas in Japan, they maintain that vow. That's called harakiri. If they're defeated in battle, they will fall on their sword, or they will disembowel themselves ritualistically. That's not a simple suicide. This is while you're alive. You take your katana, the small blade that accompanies your samurai. Now you've lost the privilege. You have to take this and you have to begin at a certain point, and you have to completely carve out your intestines while you're alive, obviously. So that is the fitting vow for a Kshatriya. Yeah, but nobody can even conceive of this. But one thing you can is that you can, spiritual master said, that we should chant 16 rounds daily, that this is the essence. Because everything will expand from that. Yasya Devi Parabhaktiya. So we should have faith. Because that faith, that real faith, not this shallow faith, that's based on the appreciation how one person could bring about a revolution in human consciousness and give us the law books for the next 10,000 years. So how fortunate are we? If we can consider that fortune on a daily basis, then why would someone think about doing anything else? Is this not the greatest occupation? What is that verse? Anyway, I forget. Samsiddhya haritoshanam. Dharma svanusata pungsam vishvaksvena katajyat. Notpadiyad yadiratim shama eva hikevam. That's one. Means a useless waste of time. Dharma svanusata. If you're just acting according to your so-called dharma, Someone has a material consideration, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a Brahmin, I'm a Vaishya. There's no profit. Dharma Svanusata Pumsam. There's no profit. Useless waste of time. So we have to accept these things the way they're being presented to us, not by my interpretation. Maybe if I change it like this, maybe if I do like this, perhaps if I adjust it according to time. No, is it not? First thing is be a proper disciple. Because then you will get the intelligence how to execute your so-called Manava Dharma, to how to become a Grahastha, Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. You will get that internally. We see it from Srila Prabhupada's life, automatically. If one is patient and one is sincere, everything will happen. Brahmachari life, Grahastha life, Vanaprastha life, and ultimately sannyas. So it's not artificial. It will come by the grace of the Lord when one is ready to fulfill that role according to, Krishna's instructions. Should we read the verse again? Akuti had 2 brothers, but in spite of her brothers, King Swayambhuv Manu handed her over to Prajapati Ruchi on a condition that the son born of her be returned to Manu as his son. This he did in consultation with his wife, Hamsarūpa. When we read these verses, we remember our God brothers and God sisters who were named after all these personalities in the early days. And of course, we didn't have, 4th canto Srimad Bhāgavatam at that time. So we didn't know who was Hamsarūpa named after, or who Akuti was named after, or any of these personalities. They were just names given by the spiritual master. And Prabhupada gave some brief. Any questions or? Sunday is a very special day, yes? Purana? Purna? What's that? No, it was Mahavishnu who took. Mahavishnu. He wanted to have darshan of Arjuna and Krishna. So that was interesting. These pastimes are very special. There was other times when Krishna got the sons of his teacher back, or the sons of his mother back. Krishna's always bringing people back from the dead. Jesus brought back one guy. But Krishna brought so many people back. But people don't want to take it as the miracle it actually is, and where it has its basis in fact, as opposed to, a loose historical record with no real corroboration, contemporaneous corroboration. So, in any case, we're very fortunate. Let us appreciate this fortune on a daily basis that, this is something that is very rarely awarded. This Manushanam Sahasra, very rarely awarded. If you can maintain this is the most valuable asset. Don't discard the perfection of the human form of life whimsically or capriciously because I don't have the immediate appreciation. If one can just extrapolate how this individual, this personality, was able to do this, that in itself should be sufficient to give one faith and confidence that there will be ultimate success. But if his intelligence is weak or deficient, then he cannot extrapolate. Extrapolation is a function of intelligence, an ability to take what you have and see how it applies according to the available information, so that you can make a decision. And people are doing this all the time. How do you think people play the so-called stock market? Things like that. They analyze. This is material, mundane, but for us, this is a no-brainer. This is so simple. The most profitable human endeavor is to stick close to the original Dharmam to Sakshat Bhagavat Prinitam. And so then there's automatically no loss or diminution. A little advancement saves one from the greatest fear. Nehabhakrama nasasti prativayana vidite swapamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahatobayat. But one has to feel this. He has to identify with it. This way, just like and everything else. Why do we go through this ritualistic of rising early, bathing, and putting on tilak? Because we have to identify with this. This is our real self. And it sets the tone. We know that this body is a temple. And we're setting aside the material, mundane, false ego. First thing. So it can only be done, in this Krishna conscious movement. It's not done cosmetically, just for appearance sake. No, these mantras have meaning. That everyone knows that tilak mantra. Everyone has memorized the tilak mantra from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Not yet. It's a good thing to learn. It helps to as you're putting on the tilak, as you're making the tilak, you chant the mantra. And then you make the application. So it's there. All right, let's get ready to greet the guests. So many people will be coming today, many for the first time. Prabhupada would be very happy to see the Renaissance in the temple. We understand how, this is our only service to Prabhupada, is to bring more fallen conditioned souls to his lotus feet and to the lotus feet of Radha Govinda. We have no other. What are the gopis doing? What are they? They're introducing various gopis into the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. We don't have that. We can only appreciate this from our relative position, to see how the spiritual master is pleased, as we saw, by new people coming. So this is a very special thing, and we should make every effort to create the welcoming environment for these, which means the temple should be spotlessly clean. Everyone's eyes should be looking how to make what's out of place, what needs to be cleaned, what additional attention is there. You look around. It's not that leave it only for the temple commander, leave it only for the person assigned to clean the temple. No, this is all everyone's responsibility. And to that extent that we understand that, then everything will go smoothly. And the reciprocation will be there on all levels within the temple compound, amongst all the devotees. So let's strive to achieve this harmony that Prabhupada was speaking about in all of his discussions with the devotees. Any? Loud though, Purna.
Yeah, the Thursday, when you say traveling on Thursday. When traveling on Thursday, I've experienced that already.
You experience it, right? Everything goes wrong, huh?
Everything goes wrong on Thursday.
But it's not Thursday in the spiritual world. It's only Thursday in the material world. So if we're preaching, if we're actually doing something, just like we don't stop Sankirtan just because it's Thursday. We don't stop worshiping the deity or doing, no, so-called traveling. Someone may say, I can't leave my room on Thursday. Someone will tell the temple commander, no, it's Thursday. I can't do my service. I can't walk downstairs. Yes, Prabhu.
I was fortunate to be present when Srila Prabhupada was being interviewed by a reporter for the current monthly magazine in Bombay.
Ah.
And he asked Srila Prabhupada about the gopis. He wanted to hear about Krishna and the gopis. Srila Prabhupada didn't even refer to it. When he answered, he just started talking, you're not Despadi. That person was quite upset. But
Of course.
in the end, he was very happy. And the headline of the newspaper, as I recall, the article that came out was, India can give knowledge to the world, culture to the world.
This is the knowledge. Prabhupada used that analogy, the blind man and the lame man. America, the West was blind. They had no shastra chakshus. And India at that time was lame in the sense that it had no technological. They were still, how can you say, in the bicycle and sewing machine age. Prabhupada commented that they're touting their success in producing bicycles and sewing machines. And in the West, they're building 747s. Prabhupada used that specific analogy. Of course, things have changed now. But at that time, it was a very apt analogy. And we see that as a result, the whole world has changed. Whether we understand how it happened or not, everything occurred, and there's that one Vyas Puja offering that someone related how that Russian general retired was witness to the fact that there was supposed to be that the Russians were ready to launch a surprise attack on the United States on September 17th, 1965, but on that day, Srila Prabhupada arrived in Boston Harbor, and they somehow or other, they didn't attack. We don't know whether or not this is verified or not, but that's what is said. But under the circumstances, we can appreciate that Krishna is in charge of everything. Of course, he can make all arrangements for his pure devotee, which he did. If we don't see Krishna's hand in Srila Prabhupada's activities, then we're not trying hard enough. These things, like I said, there are so many so-called miracles. When Prabhupada was confronted by this, people would question, Prabhupada said, these are my miracles, converting the Malechas into Vaishnavas. This is my miracle. And through them, he was able to spread Krishna consciousness up until the point. And when you hear Prabhupada's talks in the early days in India, he was saying why he had to leave India. Not one person would come forward and become a disciple. One did, but he was just formal, from Jhansi. One disciple, preaching so many years. After 1 year, Prabhupada had disciples, had a society, had the foundation for a movement. But when he went back, people took notice. And he knew it, that if I'm successful there, then it will take root. So we have to see these things in context, and then we can appreciate more and more. And we will not be fooled by the material energy to leave this movement for some nonsense reason. Oh, I can't stay, I can't do this, I can't do that. I have to go make a living. Yeah. Any other? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhāgavatam ki. Sri Sri Radha Govinda Dev ki. Gaur Premanandi. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda ki.